By 1892, John D. Rockefeller controlled 95% of the world's oil. He had crushed 22 rivals in 90 days. He had bribed railroads, bought politicians, and rewritten the rules of American capitalism in his own image. Nobody challenged Rockefeller. Nobody even tried. Until a Jewish immigrant from London did it with a single ship. He had no oil fields, no refineries, no political allies in Washington. He had a trading company that sold seashells. And with one voyage through the Suez Canal, he made Rockefeller's entire monopoly irrelevant. His name was Marcus Samuel. He built a company that today generates $300 billion in annual revenue. You know it as Shell. But here is the part of this story that will stay with you long after this video ends. Decades after Marcus Samuel died, the company he built, the empire he created from nothing, collaborated with Nazi Germany. Forced laborers worked inside Shell's refineries under SS guards. Shell shared control of a company with the manufacturer of Zyklon B, the gas used in concentration camps. And Marcus Samuel was the son of an Iraqi Jewish immigrant family. How does a Jewish man's life work become a tool of the Holocaust? The answer to that question rewrites everything you think you know about corporate power. This is the story of Marcus Samuel. To understand what Marcus Samuel walked into, you first need to understand the world Rockefeller had already conquered. In the late 1800s, oil had become the hidden engine of civilization. It fueled factories, lit city streets, powered naval fleets across every ocean. Nations quietly measured each other's strength by how much oil they controlled, and Rockefeller controlled almost all of it. Standard Oil owned the refineries, owned the pipelines, had secret deals with the railroads that made it structurally impossible for any competitor to survive. If you challenged Rockefeller, he slashed prices below your cost of production until you went bankrupt. Then he bought your company for pennies. He had done it to 22 rivals in 90 days. He would do it to anyone who tried. But here was the one weakness in Rockefeller's empire that almost nobody had noticed: moving oil. Crude oil was shipped in individual wooden barrels. Filling them was slow. They leaked constantly. The barrels themselves were expensive to produce. Railroads made it worse. Refiners produced inconsistent quantities, so trains stopped at multiple locations just to fill a single load. Transport alone consumed nearly a third of the final price of oil. Whoever could move oil cheaper than Rockefeller could survive Rockefeller. Marcus Samuel saw that gap, and he spent a decade preparing to exploit it. Marcus Samuel did not come from money. His father was an Iraqi Jewish immigrant who had built a modest import-export business in London's East End. The business handled a wide range of goods: curiosities, oriental handicrafts, and among them, decorative seashells from the Pacific. That detail, those shells. They would name the largest energy company on Earth. When his father died, Marcus took over the business. He was not content to stay modest. He began searching for opportunities beyond the family trade, looking for the one product, the one gap in the global market, where a man without Rockefeller's capital could still find an edge. He found it in kerosene. Kerosene was the fuel that lit the world's lamps. The demand for it was enormous and growing, especially in Asia, where hundreds of millions of people had no access to gaslighting. But getting it there was expensive, slow, and controlled entirely by Standard Oil's network of barrel shippers. Marcus Samuel decided he would solve the transport problem once and for all. Not by drilling for oil, not by building refineries, by rethinking the entire system of how oil moved across the world. The Suez Canal had opened in 1869. It cut 4,000 miles off the route between Europe and Asia. For Standard Oil, it was off limits. Canal authorities refused to allow flammable cargo like kerosene through their waterway. The risk of fire was too great. Every other shipper accepted this as a permanent reality. Marcus Samuel decided to solve it. He spent years engineering a solution. He commissioned a revolutionary new vessel, a bulk tanker purpose-built to carry oil by the thousands of tons, not in leaky wooden barrels, but in sealed internal compartments. Every safety feature was deliberate. Every specification was designed to meet and exceed the canal's most stringent requirements. He submitted the design to Lloyd's of London, the world's most respected maritime insurer, They awarded it their highest safety rating. He took that rating to the canal authorities. They granted passage. On July 1892, the Murex threaded through the Suez Canal, 4,000 tons of Russian kerosene, moving toward Asian markets at a cost Rockefeller could not match. Weeks were slashed off the journey. Costs collapsed compared to the route around Africa. And Standard Oil, for the first time in its history, was standing still while a competitor moved forward. Within 5 years, Shell moved 70% of the world's seaborne petroleum trade. Marcus Samuel had not out-drilled Rockefeller, he had not out-refined him, he had out-thought him. And in business, that is the most dangerous kind of competition there is. Rockefeller noticed, and he responded exactly as he always had, with ruthless, surgical price cuts. Wherever Shell appeared in a new market, Standard Oil dropped its prices below the cost of production. It was the same system that had destroyed 22 Cleveland rivals in 90 days. The expectation was simple: Shell would bleed, then die. But Shell did not die. Standard Oil could cut prices. What it could not do was match Shell's transport economics: bulk tankers, shorter routes through Suez, lower cost per barrel moved. Shell could survive on margins that would have bankrupted any barrel shipper on Earth. The price war hurt, but it bought time. And time, in business, is everything. In 1901, an oil field in Texas, Spindletop, erupted onto the global market. In its first year alone, 3.5 million barrels. The second year, 17 million. Prices collapsed. Rockefeller's grip briefly loosened for the first time in 30 years. Samuel raced to lock in supply contracts. For a moment, it looked like the decisive blow had arrived. Then Texas overproduced itself into scarcity. Supplies dried up almost as fast as they had appeared. Half of Shell's fleet sat idle. Rockefeller still controlled the refineries, still controlled the pipelines, still controlled the capital. Shell had proven it could survive. It had proven it could invade. But survival and victory were not the same thing. And Samuel was about to learn that the hardest battles are the ones you fight distracted. In 1902, Marcus Samuel became Lord Mayor of London. For 9 months, 9 critical months, he stepped away from Shell entirely. When he returned, the company was in crisis. Debt outweighed assets 2-to-1. Competitors were circling. Rockefeller was waiting. Samuel made a decision that saved the company and cost him control of it. In 1907, Shell merged with Royal Dutch, a Dutch oil company that had built deep expertise in production, refining, and management across Asia. The terms were brutal for Samuel personally. Royal Dutch took 60%. Shell kept 40%. Samuel's directors stayed on, but real control shifted. Within 1 year of the merger, the company was debt-free and paying a 20% dividend. Each side brought exactly what the other lacked. Royal Dutch had operational expertise and production capacity. Shell had tankers, routes, and the brand recognition that Samuel had spent 20 years building. Combined, they were ready to take on Standard Oil directly. And when World War I arrived and turned petroleum into a strategic weapon, Royal Dutch Shell supplied fuel to Allied forces at a scale that transformed perceptions of what a global oil company could actually do. Standard Oil was collapsing under antitrust rulings back home. Shell was expanding globally. The challenger had outlasted the monopoly. Marcus Samuel retired in 1920. Shareholders credited him, rightly, with building one of the most powerful industrial empires the world had ever seen. He was elevated to Viscount Berstead, a Jewish immigrant's son, a Seashell trader's heir, now a permanent pillar of the British establishment. He died in 1927. He never saw what came next. In the 1930s and 1940s, parts of Royal Dutch Shell became deeply entangled with Nazi Germany. Forced laborers, civilians taken from their homes in Eastern Europe and the Netherlands, were put to work inside oil refineries and petrochemical plants owned and operated by Shell's German and Austrian subsidiaries. The facilities operated under a brutal rhythm: long shifts, constant surveillance, SS guards overseeing every step, cramped barracks, severe food shortages, No freedom of movement, no wages, no protection, no relief. Shell also helped establish Deutsche Gasoline, a company created to give the Nazi Reich tighter control over civilian and military gasoline supply. And Shell shared control of that company with E.G. Farben, the same I.G. Farben that manufactured Zyklon B, the poison gas used in the concentration camps. Shell's industrial reach had extended into the machinery of the Holocaust, and the man whose name was on the building, whose vision had built every refinery, every tanker, every pipeline, was the son of an Iraqi Jewish immigrant family. There is no way to reconcile that. There is no corporate justification that softens it. It is simply the darkest irony in the history of modern business. Corporations, as history has shown us repeatedly, do not inherit the values of the people who built them. They inherit the incentives of the systems they operate inside. And in Nazi-occupied Europe, those incentives pointed toward collaboration, not resistance. Step back and look at the full arc. A boy from London's East End, the son of a seashell trader who looked at the most powerful monopoly in the world and asked one simple question: what if I moved the oil cheaper than he does? That question, and the decade he spent answering it, produced the bulk tanker, the modern oil shipping industry, and one of the largest corporations in human history. He broke Rockefeller's grip on global oil without a single oil field of his own. He became Lord Mayor of London and a British Viscount. He built a brand from decorative seashells that $300 billion in annual revenue still carries today. That is the extraordinary half of this story. The other half is this: the empire he built outlived his values. The company he created made decisions he would never have sanctioned. The brand that bore his family's identity became a gear in a machine of unthinkable horror. This is what unchecked corporate power actually looks like across generations. Not a villain making a villainous choice. A system, growing, expanding, surviving, that eventually serves no master except its own continuation. Marcus Samuel refused to fight Rockefeller on Rockefeller's terms. He found a different path: logistics, cost, and scale, and he won. But the machine he built had no memory of why it was built. And that is the most dangerous thing about corporate power. It does not age, it does not grieve, it does not remember its founders. It only moves forward. Marcus Samuel outthought the most powerful monopoly in history. And the empire he built forgot everything he stood for. Follow the money. It will always tell you the truth. If you made it to the very end, you now understand something most people never think to ask about the companies they rely on every day. Drop the phrase, "follow the money," in the comments. Let's see how creative you can get with it. And if this changed the way you see corporate power and legacy, subscribe, because every week on this channel, we follow the money through history. And it always leads somewhere darker and more fascinating than anyone expected. Next, another empire built on a single idea. Another founder history forgot. You will not want to miss it.